My name is Jess and welcome to the Storyteller Fox. Come along and listen to read aloud books, be it for bedtime, story time, or simply to read along.
The Princess and the Pea, based on the story by Hans Christian Andersen, illustrated by Mike Gordon. The Princess and the Pea, retold by Susanna Davidson, illustrated by Mike Gordon, read aloud by the Storyteller Fox. Chapter 1. The Picky Prince. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. But he didn't want just any old princess. He wanted a real one. Not one of the local princesses would do. "What's the matter with them, Patrick?" cried his father, the king. "I'm running out of princesses to show you." "I can't be sure they're real," sighed Prince Patrick. "I'll have to find one for myself." "You must do whatever you want, darling," said the queen, who spoiled him. The next day, Prince Patrick set out to travel the world in search of a real princess. He took with him 12 suitcases, 10 pairs of shoes, a spare crown, and his cousin Fred. "Goodbye, my love," cried the queen, wiping away a tear with her silk handkerchief. They hadn't gone far when they heard a loud sneeze from under the seat. "Who's there?" shouted the prince. A small figure crept out. "It's Peg. Aren't you the palace maid?" said Prince Patrick. Peg nodded. "Well, what are you doing here?" the prince asked. "I want to see the world," said Peg. "I've been at the palace all my life, ever since I was left on the doorstep as a baby." She blushed, "And cook's furious because I burned the pudding," she added. "Well, you can't come with us," said Fred. "This is a boys-only adventure." "We're not turning back now," said Prince Patrick. "She'll just have to join us." Peg grinned at Fred. "Okay," Prince Patrick went on. "First stop the Wicked Witch's hut." Fred looked alarmed. "You're joking, are you?" Prince Patrick shook his head. "The witch will know how to find a real princess. She's my best hope." Chapter 2. Off to the Witch. "Now, Peg," said Prince Patrick, "this could be dangerous. You stay in the couch. Fred and I will meet the witch." The prince knocked 3 times on the witch's door. There was no answer. "Looks like there's no one in. We'll have to go," said Fred, who was already backing away. "She must be in," said the prince, and he bent down to peer through the keyhole. A large green eye was staring at him. Prince Patrick jumped back and landed bottom first in a patch of mud. A short, plump woman opened the door, chuckling to herself. "Did I scare you? I was just checking who you were. You can't be too careful these days." Fred was amazed. Are you the witch?" he asked. "You're not scary at all." The witch looked rather upset. "I try my best," she sighed. I grew three new warts last week." "Come inside," she added. "I'm just cooking some tasty soup for lunch." "We're not hungry," said Prince Patrick quickly. "I've come to ask you for help. I want to know how to find a real princess." "Real princesses are very rare," said the witch, "and it's hard to spot a fake one. But there is a test you can do. Let me see. A real princess must have boiled brains, rotten beans, and cat spit." "What?" cried the prince. "Oh, sorry, that's a recipe for soup. This is it." The real princess test. A real princess must possess: number 1, politeness to one and all; number 2, kindness to rich and poor; and number 3, very sensitive skin. "Sensitive skin?" Prince Patrick asked, looking confused. A real princess," explained the witch, "has such tender skin that she could feel a pea under 20 mattresses." "Thank you," said the prince. "You'd be very helpful." He turned to the door. "Oh, do stay for lunch," pleaded the witch. "My soup is almost ready." "I insist. And bring in that poor girl from outside." They were stuck in the witch's hut until the cauldron was empty. "I feel sick," groaned Peg on the way back to the coach. "Well, you shouldn't have had 3 bowls then," said Fred. "I was being polite. I didn't want to hurt the witch's feelings." "That was very kind of you, Peg," said Prince Patrick, smiling at her. "Where are we going now?" asked Fred. "Now I have the witch's test. I can finally find a real princess," said the prince. "We're off to meet Princesses Prunella. Check the map, Fred." Princess map. They're off to see Princess Prudence, Princess Prunella, Princess Primrose, and Princess Pavlova. Chapter 3. Princess Prunella. Princess Prunella was very excited to see the prince. "You must come and stay in my castle," she cried. She raced over the bridge, dragging Prince Patrick with her. "Hurry, hurry," she called to her servants. I want you to prepare the best bedchamberers for the prince and Fred." "Excuse me," said Peg, struggling with all the luggage. "Where am I to sleep?" "Who are you?" "I'm a maid." "Maids belong in the attic," replied the princess haughtily. "There might be a few mice there, but I'm sure you'll cope." Peg went to her room. It was cold and damp. She could hear mice scuttling about, squeaking. Meanwhile, Fred and the prince were in the grand dining room with Princess Prunella. "You're being very kind," said Prince Patrick. "But what about Peg? Is she eating in the kitchen?" The princess looked shocked. "Your beastly little maid. You can't expect me to bother with her. She can eat the pig slops if she's hungry." "I'm afraid we must leave," said Prince Patrick. "You're not a real princess after all." "Oh, yes I am," cried Prince Prunella. "Oh, no you're not," shouted Fred. "You have failed the first real princess test." "Real princesses are polite to everyone," explained Prince Patrick, "and you've just been rude to Peg." Chapter 4. Princess Pavlova. "I won't give up," said Prince Patrick. "There must be a real princess somewhere. According to this map, there's a Princess Pavlova next door. Let's try her," Fred suggested. Princess Pavlova greeted them all very politely. "What a pleasure to have you here," she said. "Welcome to my castle." "Thank you, Your Highness." "She's passed the politeness test," thought the prince. "Now what's the next one?" "Fred," he cried, "I have a plan. I'm going to dress up as a beggar and see if Princess Pavlova is kind to me." "Try out your disguise on Peg first," said Fred, "to make sure it works." Prince Patrick found Peg sitting on a tree stump, about to eat an apple. "I'm a hungry beggar. Have you any food for me?" "Oh, you poor thing," Peg cried when she saw him. "Here, have my apple." Prince Patrick was very pleased with himself. "Excellent! It works!" he shouted, throwing off his disguise. "It's you? What are you doing?" asked Peg. But the prince was already knocking on the castle door to try the test on Princess Pavlova. A servant answered. "Is someone there?" cried Princess Pavlova. "It's a beggar, Your Highness." "We've got nothing for him," snapped the princess. "Tell him to go away." Prince Patrick turned away. "She's not a real princess," he thought. "A real princess is both polite and kind, even to beggars." Chapter 5. A Real Princess. "I give up," said the prince with a sigh. "I don't think there's a real princess anywhere. We may as well go home." They got ready for the long journey back to the palace. Everyone was glum, even the horses. The coach arrived at the palace just in time. A huge storm was brewing. Peg was sent straight to the kitchens in disgrace. "You've got hundreds of dishes to wash," scolded the cook. "They've been piling up since you left." Prince Patrick and Fred went to find the king and queen. Outside, rain began beating against the windows. Streaks of lightning lit up the sky. Just then, there was a knock on the door. "There is a Princess Primrose to see you, your Highness," said the footman. A beautiful princess stepped into the room. She was wet from the rain and shaking with cold. "I'm so sorry to trouble you," she said politely, "but my coach has broken down." "No trouble at all," said Prince Patrick quite quickly. "Why don't you stay the night at our castle? We'll fix your coach in the morning." "Thank you, I must give you something in return. She acts like a real princess," thought the prince, "but I must be sure." He asked the servants to prepare Princess Primrose's bedroom. "I want 20 mattresses on the bed," ordered Prince Patrick, "and a pea at the very bottom." Peg didn't get to bed that night. She had to finish washing the dishes. The next morning, Princess Primrose came down for breakfast. "I'm looking refreshed." "How did you sleep?" asked Prince Patrick. "I slept like a baby. I loved all those mattresses," the princess said. "It was the most comfortable bed." Prince Patrick sighed. A real princess would have felt that pea, he thought. He waved goodbye to Princess Primrose as soon as breakfast was over. "Another fake one? She's not good enough for Patrick." It was Peg's job to clean the princess's bedroom. Slowly, she climbed up the ladder, yawning with each step. "I'll just lie down for a moment," Peg thought, "before I started cleaning up." In no time at all, she was fast asleep. An hour later, Peg woke with a start. "Ow!" she said. "There's something really lumpy in this bed. I'm getting down." But as she leaned over, she knocked the ladder. It clattered to the ground. "Drat!" Peg cried. "I'm stuck." "Help!" she shouted as loudly as she could. "I'm stuck! Please help!" Everyone rushed into the bedroom. "What are you doing up there?" Prince Patrick called. "I was supposed to be cleaning," said Peg, "but I was so tired I fell asleep. And there's something horribly hard in this bed," she added. "I'm covered in bruises." "I can't believe it!" cried the prince. "You were polite to the witch, kind to a beggar, and now you've felt a pea under 20 mattresses. You must be a real princess." He raced up the ladder. "Peg, will you marry me?" Peg gasped. "You want to marry me, a palace maid?" "Yes, please." 3 cheers for Princess Peg, shouted Fred, and everyone cheered. So Prince Patrick finally married his real princess. He put the pea in a glass case in the palace museum for everyone to see. It may still be there today.
The end. And that's the end of our story time. For more bedtime stories, you can check on our YouTube playlist or listen to more storytime compilations at the Storyteller Fox. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.